Welcome to the You Can't Afford Me podcast, where we skip the fluff and dive straight into the grind. Real entrepreneurs, real struggles, and the unfiltered journey behind success. Let's get into it. Hey guys, thanks for joining us on another episode of the You Can't Afford Me podcast. Now this one you guys are going to want to be locked in for. We're all familiar with the YMCA. We all know the YMCA and the massive brand that they are. But how many of you know everything that goes on at the YMCA? My guess is maybe 5% of the people listening to this. So we got the big cheese today. We brought in the big guns, all right? We have Jody from the YMCA here with us today. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic, and that is quite a setup. So I'm pretty excited to get into this.
Oh, we're gonna get into it. But first, give everybody a quick rundown of who you are and your role with the organization.
Yeah, Jody Alexander, President and CEO of the YMCA, and basically, that just means I get to work with the community and work with the staff to deliver impact across the community. So
beautiful. You can tell she's got some PR training. She's done this.
Oh, I do.
She's done this for a little bit.
A little bit.
So first, before we're going to dive into a lot of stuff with the YMCA and your role there. But first, let's get to know you. What did you do before this?
This is all I've done. So. And we'll probably talk about it, but the YMCA is often people's first job, and it was for me. So my basic why story is I grew up, my parents were 16 and 17 when they had me, a little small town in Mansfield, Ohio, center of Ohio. And my parents will say they had absolutely no idea what they were doing, but one of the things that they did do was they put a support system around them, which included me getting to go to my YMCA. And so I learned to swim at the Y, which led me to be on my swim team, through elementary, middle, high school years, and did all the things YMCA. I could ride my bike to the Y, my local YMCA. I'm first generation college. My dad was supposed to be the first person to go to college in the fall that I was born. So fast forward, that got to be me. I needed a job while I was in college, and I went to the YMCA. I'm so old, though. I went to the student union, pulled the ticket that had the phone number that they were hiring a swim team coach. And so that was my first job as a swim team coach. And I think I've done everything that there is with the YMCA up to moving to Richmond just a couple of years ago as my first CEO job.
Nice. And I'm just going to say this right now so the algorithm picks it up when we title this. But I'm sure the title of this episode is going to be Swim Instructor to CEO. That is a phenomenal piece there. So you went to college. Where'd you go to college at?
University of Toledo.
Oh, nice.
Go Rockets.
There we go.
Yeah,
Go Rockets.
I'm a real big Buckeye fan, though, and so I'm a little heartbroken today over the first round of the tournament. But
yeah,
that's okay.
that was a
go
tough
VCU,
one.
so we'll do that.
That was a tough one. I was at an event right when that game was happening. And you got to be a Browns fan and a Cleveland Cavaliers. Okay.
My husband grew up in Cincinnati.
Okay.
So Bengals fan. Yeah.
I can't be too mad at that. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Browns are a little worse. I can tolerate Cincinnati.
Oh boy. Okay. I don't know. This might be timeout here, but it's okay. It's all good. It's all good. As long as you're not a Michigan fan, we're good.
No. Nothing on the Michigan side. So you went to college.
Yeah.
What were you majoring in college?
I was an education major. Always thought I was going to be a teacher. I had amazing YMCA people around me that were like, you should work for the Y. You should work for the Y professionally. I'm like, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
But I got a lot of exposure. I did swim team, was a lifeguard, swim lessons. And because I was an education major, I started to do before and after school childcare. So I would open up a childcare site, then I'd go to class all day, then I would go do the after school again, then I'd go to swim team practice, and kind of started to learn all kinds of things about the Y. But my first job was aquatic director, opening up a brand new pool in a tiny little town on the western edge of Ohio, and that was my first professional position. Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah.
It was really hard.
So from the high school years to getting your first big girl job with the Y, what was it about the Y that you said this is a great place to work?
First of all, it's fun. It's actually fun, and I got to use a lot of my teaching kinds of things. Like, I think I'm a wired coach. I think I'm a wired, look at people, figure out what makes them tick, which is what coaches have to do, and kind of treat everybody individually to put all that together to make for impact somehow. So I think I got to blend those early days of coaching, all of that I learned of being coached on different teams in high school and growing up, and turn that into, well, how do you apply that to building a team to teach swim lessons? How do you, put that together with the kids that you're impacting on the swim team? So I think that it was fun, and I got to see the joy and the impact. It also probably comes down to relationships. I had a lot of really amazing people that kind of poured into me and taught me different things. So
love it.
And it's still fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still fun. Otherwise, I don't think I'd be here this many years.
Yep. So total, how many years has it been?
37.
That's amazing.
37.
That's amazing.
37. Up and down Eastern. The Y has 840-ish different Ys across the country, different associations. So Greater Richmond is one of those, and we cover a lot of territory, if you want to call it. 7 different municipality areas. So I've been in Ohio. The Toledo Association. I went down to Orlando, Florida. I went to Charlotte, North Carolina. I went back to Orlando, and then most recently here in Richmond, which I love.
I was going to say, out of all the places you've lived.
I love it here. I absolutely love it here. I think it's an amazing blend of a lot of opportunity, I've never lived in a capital city, so being in a capital city has really amazing things. But it's been very easy to get to know people. It is a big town, small town feel to it, and
this is very much a networking town.
Yeah, it is. It's just been. People will remind me that I'm not. It'll take a little bit of time before you can say you're from Richmond.
Yeah,
but that's okay. That's okay. But I love it here.
I think people let me say I'm from Richmond after probably about 10 years.
Yeah, that's exactly what I hear. So I think you've added to the benchmarking.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
So from that, your first big girl job with the YMCA. Talk about the next step in your progression there.
Yeah, so with the Y, we do a lot of things. And so when you say you know the YMCA, but do you know the YMCA? Most people know the YMCA for their experience and the things that they do. So what's cool about this path is a lot of self-directed and interest-directed. So I'm a curious person, and I'm a learner. And so I did aquatics, which is all the things, swim lessons and swim teams and lifeguards and lifeguard training and all of that. But my early part of my career, I did water walking classes. So that was kind of part of aquatics, right? And
water walking?
Water walking. So it's an exercise class, but in the water.
Like you play like you're Jesus Christ
so
or something?
Not on the water, in the water, right? In the water, right? And so mobility and working with older people and doing that. And I discovered I kind of like the fitness side of things.
Yeah. So
I went and learned the fitness side of things. So now I became an aquatic and a wellness director.
Nice.
And with that, I could add, then I learned how to do some of those things actually on the land as well. I could not even find the beat of the music, I don't think, when I first got started. There's a thing called a downbeat in your feet, your rhythm-wise, right? You're supposed to move with it. I don't even think I knew what that was, but I stuck with it, and people helped me through it. And my career probably close to 15 years as a wellness director. Then I became a sport director, and then I added on membership, and then it was total operations, multi-site locations and operations, and strategy, learning how to make things better, learn how to make teams better. So just kind of all of it adding on. And anytime I had I want to learn how to do that, people came beside me informally to help support that. And then the Y also has a really great training program. So a lot of formal learning, certifications, things like that.
So it sounds like, first off, this sounds like an amazing company to work for.
It's an amazing organization.
You got me thinking, do I need to have somebody run my office and I'll put in an application with you before you leave?
Always.
No, I'd be a horrible employee. At this point, once you're an entrepreneur for a certain amount of time, you're almost unemployable.
Yep, I get it.
It sounds like, number one, that there are a lot of opportunities, but two, the fact that so many people are willing to pour into it. So this leads me into something we were talking about off camera real quick, is that so many people, I was just sharing the story with you, a friend, I think that should go into the nonprofit space. She's looking for a new job. And her first response is, well, I'm not going to make any money in the nonprofit world. Talk to us about, not just specifically with the YMCA, but in general, I need people to know that there are opportunities where you can earn a decent living working in a nonprofit space.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was saying my degree is education, but I applied business all day long.
Yeah.
It is running this organization is running a very big business.
Yeah.
And it is a lot of revenue streams. It's a lot of accountability. We have 18 locations across our footprint. We have a 100-acre camp. And we're serving a lot of people. So this year alone will be 300,000 people.
True.
With that is a lot of diverse revenue streams. So I think people think nonprofit, big heart, absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of skill that has to come with it. And so therefore, nonprofits, you can do the big heart thing, but also make a career out of it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of nonprofits that you can do
absolutely.
that with. Yeah.
Absolutely. Richmond for sure is one. Let me ask you that. Out of all the communities you've lived in, I've always felt like this community is so nonprofit centered and focused. Like,
yeah, it really is. And the nonprofits here are also very cooperative, collaborative. I don't know if I've necessarily found that, holistically in other places. There are so many big meetings where all like, what are you doing? How are you doing it? And how do we not duplicate, but how do we complement each other and partner and do those things? And that's a really interesting spirit here. And it makes it fun because we're all thinking about not competing with some of the philanthropic dollars or the volunteerism, but let's do this so we can all go a little bit deeper in the lanes that we've created, but do it synergistically and together. And funders like that. Funders like you to maximize that, opportunity. So it's a great nonprofit spirit here.
Yeah, the collaborative effort here for sure. I've had a lot of people come to me and say, I'm thinking of starting this business or this nonprofit. Like, give me your thoughts on this. And I've had so many people over the years come to me and have a nonprofit idea, and I'm like, number one, like, I feel like there's an organization already doing, like, why recreate the wheel? We don't need 20 nonprofits that are all trying to achieve the exact same thing. Like, there's some collaborative efforts that can take place there. Let's talk about the things that people don't know about the YMCA.
Yeah.
So you talk about knowing the YMCA from your experience. My experience, my parents were not particularly fond of jumping in the water. So we didn't take a lot of beach trips and pool days like when I was growing up. I don't think I've ever seen my dad in a pool before. My mom, I think I had seen a couple times. So they weren't big into swimming, but they thought it was important that I need to know how to swim. And where did they take me to get my lessons? The local YMCA. Awesome. So for me, that is my experience with the YMCA. I grew up there learning how to swim. During the summers, I'd go there after I learned and just have a good time. What are some of the unknown services that really don't get highlighted?
Yeah, so I'm going to go all the way back to some of our origin stories because these are the things I don't think people realize.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk right now because we are day number 2 of March Madness. Did you know that basketball was invented at the YMCA?
Oh.
Yes, it was.
Clip that.
Yeah, right. Basketball was invented. Dr. James Naismith out of the YMCA, right? That came from the YMCA. Volleyball was invented at the YMCA.
Wow.
Father's Day came out of the YMCA. Racquetball came out of the YMCA.
Wait, did you say Father's Day came out?
Father's Day.
All right, I need the story on that.
The YMCA. Yeah, it's just, we started, again, with family relationships, and our origin story, our basic story is we were actually founded in London, England in 1844, and it was during the Industrial Revolution where people were, especially young men, were flocking to the cities and for work.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a whole lot of wholesome activity. So a group got together, almost forming like a club, and they did some Bible study. They did recreation, which is where things like bodybuilding came out and calisthenics came out of the, the YMCA. And so with that recreation mindset, it was, how do we not go to, I think back then, right, they called them brothels and things like that, but that we had more relationship building, like-minded young men that would come together. Came to the United States in 1853 and just constantly continued to invent. I love what you're talking about being an entrepreneur, right? Well, I like to think our organization is among the most entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
We're celebrating 175 years this year in the United States. Richmond, I should say, is celebrating 170 years. So we're one of the first YMCAs in the nation. But every time the community is looking for something, the Y steps in some of those gaps with creativity, with development of something. And so same thing as we were talking about, Father's Day, just bringing fathers and sons together to celebrate what that relationship, looks like.
Ooh,
So,
we're
yeah.
getting a history lesson.
Right. I know. I can't help it. Remember, I told you, old
this.
lady. I'm told you, old lady with a Y.
No, I never would have known that. That's
Well,
awesome.
think about when in the 80s when moms went back to work and you heard all of the things like latchkey kids.
Yeah.
Right? The Y is the largest after school provider in the entire country.
Wow.
We serve more kids after school than any other organization. And it's because, again, we created quality and affordable after school care when all the moms went back to work.
Yeah.
So it's constantly looking for those spaces where we assess community needs and how do you bring people together in order, to do that. So
That's
I guess you're
amazing.
asking me like some of the things. And so
services.
currently, right?
Sorry,
so currently,
I cut you off.
because I decided to give the history lesson, right? So our YMCA is focused on a very North Star of supporting the community and supporting the region's efforts in economic mobility.
Love
And you
that.
probably are like, what are you talking about? Well, our YMCA has programs and services that are evidence-based, outcomes-based, with the center of people thriving. Like we're constantly thinking about how is it that we make people thrive, help reach their highest potential, and how do we make communities thrive. So that framework of lifting people and economic mobility. So we have 3 impact areas, and it is drowning prevention. So, we're never going to shy away from what you know about the YMCA.
Yeah.
People need to learn how to swim. It's for safety reasons, but it's honestly for a lifetime of enjoyment, right? It is the beaches. It is the pools. It's getting to go to the river and feel safe with your family. So
I love my jet skis in the summer.
Right? Exactly. So even in Richmond, Virginia, and Virginia as a whole, the #1 cause of accidental death for children under 4 and under, is drowning.
Jeez.
And so we use our network to not only provide lessons, but to provide parent education related to that. Because it's not backyard pool drownings for children. It's actually bathtub drownings. And so we don't have swim lessons, for that, but we could use our network to provide that awareness and that education, right?
Yeah.
So drowning prevention is one impact area. Second impact area is enriching learning in the out of school time space. So schools are the pipeline, right, for education. But what happens after school, where you surround young people with caring adults, where they get to have peer-to-peer, call it conflict resolution, but it's more like relationship building.
Absolutely.
And experience curiosity. Curiosity. And so that could be sports. That is sports. That is after school programming. That is bringing teens together for leadership experiences. And it's also workforce development.
Yeah.
We are the largest employer of 16 to 24-year-olds in the country and here in our own community.
Wow.
Yeah,
I had
right?
no idea. Oh my
So,
gosh.
like I said, it's people's first jobs.
Yeah.
And it's also people's kind of winding down jobs as well. So that's a whole nother thing. And the last impact area is advancing whole health. So thinking, again, of people as whole people.
Yeah.
So you've got, you're going to go into YMCA, and of course you're going to see wellness and fitness, and you're going to see machines and weights and group exercise classes. Those are by ways of bringing people together to experience community and to get healthy. We're never going to say we're in the mental health business, but we're definitely in the mental well-being business. And a lot of that is, things you may not know, that many of our sites do food distributions weekly and monthly. So we step in spaces of food insecurity. This is such a cool partnership. We're working with the American Heart Association. All of our YMCAs are getting blood pressure monitoring cuffs. And we've got a program where we're teaching people to know your numbers. So from a prevention perspective, and we had HCA Foundation help to bring that to life with funding. So we use our buildings as catalysts to bring people together on top of providing the experiences and the fun programming.
Absolutely. Man, you're blowing my mind right now. I had I knew there was going to be stuff I learned in this interview that I didn't know about the YMCA, but this is more than I expected. One thing I want to highlight too, can you tell people what YMCA stands for? Because I want to make sure people understand where this organization comes from.
Yeah. So it's interesting because we've gone through periods of logo and meaning changes. And right now, and you're going to see on my logo, right, it's the Y, right? And so, but in that Y logo, you see kind of a triangle. And that triangle is really our, again, origin triangle of we support people in spirit, mind, and body. So when we talk about advancing whole health, we're also talking about the whole person and the whole body, which means spirit, mind, and body,
Absolutely.
right? And so we are a values-based organization based off of Christian heritage and Christian principles. And through those programs and services is how we support people. And we also, I think in our overall mission statement, the most important words are for all. So we are really like thinking about constantly how are we serving, and it sounds really weird, but literally cradle to grave, all people, all persons, anybody. And we're really proud of programs that we have that help support people even financially. Because, of course, there's a cost to doing some of the experiences that we have, but we would never turn anybody away if that becomes a barrier to cost. So we've got sliding fee scales, and we have lots of free opportunities and programs. So it means, and it's meant a lot over the course of the years. Logos have changed. You know, originally we were Young Men's Christian Association. That's what YMCA stands for, if you're going to like spell it out. But as you can see, like we've become and evolved to be so much more inclusive with everybody.
Yeah, love that. Whew.
I know, right? I know. I talk a lot, right?
No,
so much I want to share.
No, this is perfect. Like this is a fantastic interview because to expose people to everything that this organization offers, and I think that kind of leads into one of my next questions: the demographics that you guys provide services for and work with. Is it? And I don't know. I'm not asking this from a point of like I know the answer, and I just want you to say this. Is it low-income families? Is it high-net-worth families? Is it middle class? Because I think a lot of people, the connotation with anything nonprofit involved, people think it's just for low-income housing individuals.
Yeah, I truly want to say, right, it is for all. And the beauty of the YMCA is, just think about this. How many organizations at scale bring people together, right? So I was mentioning we have different, buildings. That's great. And they're hubs of communities. But you can show up at 5 a.m. and you're going to see a complete mixture of people. Probably a lot of type A people that are trying to get a workout in, before they go.
That's when I gotta get it.
Right, yeah, right. And then you show up between 9 and 11, and you're going to see young, moms or dads bringing their children in after they dropped other kids off at school. You're going to see maybe retired people or people that have more flexible schedules because they're working from home and they want to get out of the house and actually, build relationships. So, we have a focus in our impact areas of, delivering all those programs and services. We want people to think of us first. It doesn't matter what income bracket you are in or what, ethnicity or race or culture. We want you to think of us first for solving those needs. But I would say we also have a really high intentionality of thinking about people that are furthest from thriving and thinking about that crisis to thriving continuum. So that's why I mentioned that we do food distribution, or we have a really impactful program that we do with the city of Richmond called Help One RVA. And you can literally call, you can make a phone call, or you can go to our website. And if you're about to be evicted, or you're looking for housing, or if your lights are about to be shut off, or you don't know where to find food, or you need transportation because you just landed your first job, we have staff, social needs navigators, that help you get you connected to those resources to stabilize your situation, to then help you move to where, I can take my family and go have fun in the gymnasium playing basketball, right? So there's a whole lot of things that we're doing in that overall continuum. So it's all people.
I love that. And the fact that you've spoken about community so much and the relationships that are built under the roof of the Y. I love that it's mixing different cultures, different economic statuses, because a lot of times, like I realize now that I'm getting a seat to some bigger tables than I used to years ago. It's not for lack of knowledge or desire or ambition. It was I just didn't have the right connections. And then once you get some of those connections, a lot of things can open up to you. On that note, too, I want to take it back to a personal note. I think not just for females, but I think in particular, I think it's very important. Like, it does my body good knowing, like, my daughter's going to see this interview one day. She's 5 now. But she's going to see this interview one day and see, oh, that lady was running the company? Oh, well, if somebody that looks like me can do that, then, that means there are opportunities for me as well, too. Talk about the balance. And I don't know if you have kids. Like, I think you told me you're married. But talk about the balance and scaling your career, because to be involved with an organization this long, you had to be laser focused on your career. So how did you balance the family life and the career?
Yeah. What a great question. It was hard, right? So first off, everything that we do, we work when people play.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you're balancing a family, but how cool to be a part of a family organization where your family can also participate.
Yep.
So, right. So I might be working, but my kids are in their swim lesson or they're, part of their soccer team and, doing those kinds of things. So that part has been amazing. Not going to say there weren't a whole lot of times that I was like, I can't do this. Boo-hoo. This is like, this is really hard. So kudos to all of the moms and the dads that are trying to make it work. A couple of things I intentionally did. I just was telling somebody about this yesterday. I found a female leader, a couple of female leaders that were always about a decade ahead of me in their career. And it didn't really matter necessarily what position they were in. I wasn't doing that. But I wanted to see how they navigated. So when I had elementary school kids, they had kids that were in middle school and high school.
Oh, that's
right.
Smart.
And
that's
so I'm just kind of like, okay, how did you do it? How do you do this? What were your tips? And, and all of those things. I also have a little bit of our family is, I have a 29-year-old and a 27-year-old daughter-in-law. So they've been married 6 years now. And I have a 25-year-old. So my kids are kind of fully launched now and, doing those things. So I had people like kind of, help me figure out how to help raise those kids. And I remember an executive director that I'm teaching a group exercise class and my child's in our child development center while I'm there. I brought him to work with me and she's in there holding him for me. So like when you go back to the culture of the Y and thinking about how it is that, that we support each other, those are things that have been really important. But my family also made an early decision that, and this kind of blows people away a lot as well, is our life got really crazy, especially as I got into multi-site management and all of that. And we're open 100 hours per week and, kind of retail, if you think about it. We decided life was too crazy. And my husband actually became a stay-at-home dad. And so when we made that, and that was hard, we dropped down to one income. But we so believe in this organization and what that opportunity was. And that just led him to kind of be entrepreneurial, and he renovates homes now. Nice. So but he did that while trying to help with the kids. So I've had some interesting stories where, I became a member of a civic club. I won't even name which one, a civic club. And in the civic club, as new members, you'd wear these big badges so that everybody knew that you were new. Yeah. We had a Christmas party.
Like a scarlet letter.
Something like that, right? And so we had a Christmas party, and I was 30 days into this. We go to the Christmas party. Now, I'm going to remind you, I've got the big badge on. Yeah. And I was only one of 9 women in the entire 140-person civic club.
Jeez.
Mm-hmm. And every single person would walk up to my husband, shake his hand, and say, "Oh, are you new to the club?" And he's like, "Actually, no. Like, you want to talk to my wife, and she's the executive director of, whatever." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So, he's a champion, right, and an ally for this type of leadership. And he'll certainly say he's the biggest cheerleader in fan club, even when I didn't believe in myself. So it's a little non-traditional, but surrounded myself with female leaders, also had a support system, and telling me that I can do it when I didn't think I could do it.
That's awesome. Like, to have that dynamic, it reminds me of me and my wife in terms of, like, she's a stay-at-home mom. She really didn't give me a choice. I had always dreamed that my wife would be a stay-at-home mom, and I prayed that I would marry a woman that wanted that role. And I think it was after 5-6 months of our daughter being in daycare, and, you're getting the pictures throughout the day, and she texted me while she was at work. She's like, I'm not going to watch our daughter grow up through a cell phone. You got 4 weeks, and I'm leaving this place, so figure it out.
Yep, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. And it was the plan originally, but, like, we hadn't actually put pen to paper, and I was like, holy crap, like, this is real. And everything ended up working out. Like, you figure those pieces out, but I think it's so important because our daughter, I think by the time she got to preschool, my wife was adamant about her being able to, like, spell her name and, like, what's our address and, you know, who do you call? What's our actual name, not just mom and dad. Like, if you go missing, like, you need to know how to identify us. And she was miles ahead of some of the kids. So I'm like, the education doesn't happen in the school. It's happening at home first.
That's exactly right. That trajectory. And, and I think that, I know we're talking about the personal side, but I'm going to draw it right back to the organization, because that is so, personally, those are the things that really fuel me in trying to lead this organization, because we all know the cost of childcare.
Yeah.
And it's astronomical.
Insane.
So for so many people, it doesn't even make sense. So how on earth, like, we both probably feel super fortunate, right, that we have two parents at home. I had, me and my husband got to jointly raise these kids, and that was hard. Yeah. I mean, oh my goodness, it was so hard. Sometimes I just think back, how on earth did we do this?
We're gonna talk off camera, because this 5 and 4 year old age
it's right. It is something, and so I can't imagine if you're a single parent trying to do it, or if you want to, not have a parent working, right, to do that. So we are super committed to bringing affordable childcare to people. That is part of economic mobility. Yeah. That is part of supporting families, and it's just not there. And so those are some of those efforts. So if you are a parent that wants to maybe get an advanced degree or get a certification that gives you a better shot at wages, then you've got to be able to have childcare that you can rely on and be safe. So I kind of blend a lot of my own personal experiences and thinking about that, and how I also try to lead the organization and think about how do we support our people in our community. Yeah,
that's awesome. Let's talk about, because you mentioned in that civic group you were one of 9 women out of 70-some hundred. What has it been like navigating this space and reaching this high in your career as a woman? And I'm not a woman, so I can't say it, but I feel like there's a lot of correlations between females and minorities in this country in terms of, like, the struggle and where we've been able to get. And I know for me, like, when I was coming up in my career, you wouldn't know about looking at me right now, I wouldn't go to the grocery store unless I was wearing a 3-piece suit. I was very young. I had ambition, but I didn't. I told you I learned everything from YouTube University. I ended up dropping out of school at the junior level because they weren't teaching me what I wanted to know about entrepreneurship. So I wore a 3-piece suit everywhere because I was like, I have to present a certain way. Number one, I'm young, and number two, I'm a minority. So there's some doors where people are just automatically going to shut just based off of how I look. So for me, it was like, well, the one thing I can change is how I present myself to the world. So I'm going to make sure I'm what black people call casket fresh, casket sharp. So for you, what was that like? Because now I feel like in just the last couple of years, I've really started to get at some of those other tables and offers are being extended to me that weren't before. What were some of the struggles that you had to deal with as a female in this industry?
Yeah, and I love this because it's National Women's History Month.
Oh yeah.
And so I love it that you're talking about that. So let me start from where we currently are. There are when people think about the YMCA and they think of women in the YMCA, they automatically, and I tell you, it's happened to me here even, they're like, oh, do you work in childcare?
Yeah.
Like they naturally think that we're working in those caregiver spaces, and those are important roles. Yeah. I'm going to say that, but they're not the only roles.
Yep.
Richmond's pretty cool because I'm actually, in our 170-year history, I'm actually the second woman CEO. So I actually followed a woman CEO. And I mentioned I was in Orlando, Florida. I was the first COO, woman COO.
Nice.
So we're working to carve our spaces. We're working, to do that. But I mentioned I was 37 years in the YMCA. So I can guarantee you most men that are sitting in CEO roles in the YMCA and probably lots of different companies, they did not take 37 years to do it, right? So part of that was probably me. like, oh, I'm not good enough. I can't do it. I look at that skill set, and, and women do that all the time. Like, I got to be 100% ready. Am I really ready? Do I know how to, to step into that? And I know my male counterparts don't do that. They're like, I'm ready to go. It's like, let's go, so sometimes we get in our, our own way. I am super intentional of, reaching that hand back and carving the way for others as well. Like I said, I had people in my life that did that, and many of them encouraged me a decade or more ago. Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? And I'm so glad that I did. And I'm going to make sure that I continue to set the table and look for others to, to help do that. So there's a couple things that have to happen with that. Part of nonprofits, even their boards, need to start to look different. Absolutely. Because the boards hire the executive staff or the senior level staff. And if you look at a lot of nonprofits, you may not have a lot of women at the table, right? And so there's just a lot of boards that are your typical 100-year-old looking, board. So I'm really proud of our YMCA for not only here locally, but across the country that are starting to change that, so that they're looking for a different skill set. And then I'm a huge proponent of find your people in your workspace and creating those, those networks. So we have a national employee resource group, system, and then we brought that very, very locally. So we have a women's resource leadership network. We have an African American. We have an LGBTQ. We have a disabilities community, ERG, right? So we want people to be able to bring their whole person and all of their experiences to work. So we're going to train you functionally. We're going to do a really good job, but we also want you to find your people and to find that empathy and find this community in that. So I think there's a lot of formal, informal, and ways of getting those networks together as well.
No, that's amazing to hear. And people quite don't understand, like, I'll use myself as an example, and I don't know if I've ever told more than 5 people in the world this story I'm about to share. But there was a lot of people will look at the product of me now and where I'm at today, and they're just like, oh man, he's got it together. He's got this media firm, da, da, da. And they don't think that I've dealt with certain things. So I think up to this point, I've owned or co-founded 9 different companies.
Wow.
And the vast majority of those, I had a white business partner. And a lot of people think, first off, a lot of my friends are white, but a lot of people didn't understand why I did that strategically. Is because I knew that there were certain doors that were going to automatically be shut in my face. But if I at least had this guy standing next to me, then it's like, okay, we'll creak the door open for you. But that prompted me to think of this story. Really the only time I can think that I've faced racism, like, blatantly in my face. So as I told you, like, I started my career in the mental health space, like, in my early 20s. I was, like, 22 years old or something like that, maybe. Which that's normally an older guy's game, so I had to wear the suits. And I'll never forget, it was at this point, something happened with my car. I had the cash to go get another car, so I was looking at some used dealerships. Somebody recommended this one place. I went and drove over. For the time being, since my car was broken down, my aunt actually loaned me her Cadillac. Now, back then, riding in a Cadillac, I was like, you can tell me nothing. I felt on top of the world. I had my suit on. Like, I felt like I was looking good. Roll up to this one car dealership, start looking around a lot, and I'm like, hey, I'm looking for something in this price point, da-da-da-da-da. Owner of the shop looks dead at me and says, we ain't got nothing like that around here. I was like, he just kept it that simple, that problem. Well, you don't have anything like in that price? No, we don't sell anything in that price range. Okay, appreciate it. And I start to walk back to my car, and I look over and I see a sticker on one of the vehicles right in the price point that I was asking for. And as I touched the handle of the car door to get back in, I was like, nope, that ain't right. I'm going to go back and say something to this guy. And I walk over to the guy, and I'm like, hey, man, like, I'm not sure if I rubbed you the wrong way or something like that, but, like, felt like I was very professional to you. I'm asking about doing business with you. And now I see that you do have vehicles on the lot. Is there an issue that you have with me? And he just looks at me and says, get off my property right now. I came back to my parents, and I told my dad that story. This guy didn't know that my dad was the president at the time of the local NAACP. So my dad was able to sick some dogs on them, and some reviews probably went out, and I think some things ended up happening with that young man's business. But that's literally one of the only times. But I share that story to say this, is that you don't know the struggle that a lot of people have to go to get to the spots in which they're at. Whether it's racism, whether it's sexism, whether it's some of these other things that you mentioned in terms of the programs that you guys have. It's not easy for a lot of people to get where they're at. So, like, especially when I see a female woman in a high position of power, I'm like, I don't have to say 2 words to her. I'm like, she's got my highest level of respect, because I know it takes a lot to get in that seat that you're sitting in.
You know, that's an awesome responsibility too. So there's the one thing that someone along the way told me this, be really careful, because your title will walk in the door before you do. And so I have an awesome responsibility with that title, right? Yep. And, that would potentially be the pinnacle of a career, right? Yeah. When you say that's the top of the top. And I don't take that lightly. Yeah. And remembering the struggles and remembering what, my parents went through at 16 and 17 years old, and who surrounded them, and what that meant to be first-gen college. I applied for college. I never even visited the college, because we didn't have a transportation to get there. Yeah. It was just hard to get there, and figure those things out. My mom has she dropped out of school after her sophomore year, and she has for the longest time, I said she got her GED at 28, and I recently said something to her about how I shared that, and she looked at me and she said, I have a high school diploma. And there's a difference, because she had to go back to night school to actually take the coursework to get the high school diploma. And she went on to be a nurse, and she retired from a hospital system as a critical care nurse, actually. My dad delivered bread overnight. He pumped gas during the day, and eventually he eventually got into General Motors as a tool and die maker. So I look at the struggles, and I constantly think of our team. We have about 2,500 team members that work here in the Richmond area, and I know there's more to their story. There's always more to their story. So how is it that we create a space that's comfortable enough for them to share if they want to share, but put so many of those supports around them so that, they've got that opportunity. So when I say, like, people thriving and economic mobility and, all of those things, I'm not just talking about it's for the community. I'm talking about how are we doing it for our team members? How are we paying a wage that, people can support their families on? How are we providing health insurance and different benefits that they could stay with the Y for a really long time if they choose? So one of my favorite words and phrases and meanings, right, is grit. And I think my parents demonstrated it, which just gave me a better path. My kids probably didn't have the same viewpoint of even me and my husband as I, did of my parents, just because of circumstances and, situations, but grit and, and allowing for that space.
Love that. I hate to cut this conversation short, or not cut it short, but just cut it at all, because I feel like there's so much more I could ask you. The last thing I'm going to ask you is 99% of the people I bring on this podcast are entrepreneurs. Hearing your journey, even though you're in a corporate position, what you've done, you can't do without entrepreneurial determination, like however that route is. So I want to ask you, what is the toughest moment that you faced during your journey up, and how were you able to overcome that?
The toughest journey was, so today is the 20th, so it was 6 years ago yesterday. COVID was in full scale. And we're an organization that brings people together, and we had to close our doors. And the first part of that is we had to close our doors to the community. And so I just described all of those things. Like, for so many people, we're like their third space. For senior citizens and older adults that live on their own, that interaction during their water walking class, the only other human beings that they see is when they go to the YMCA, right? For some people, it was getting food. For so, and I was in Orlando, Florida at that time, and I got to look at, we had 1,900 employees that day. I had to tell 1,900 employees that we had to furlough them. I like, you can't dream of that kind of stuff when you're in an organization like this that's endured so many different things. In Orlando or in Florida, we were closed about 8 weeks before we were allowed to reopen. We were a state that reopened a little bit sooner, and it was so tough, like getting back, because people were scared, and just even getting, we didn't know all the things, then. And so when I think back, I'm like, how do we constantly future-proof ourselves from that? Again, when you're an organization that relies on bringing people together. So we pivoted a ton. I hate that word because we all use that word so much during that. We had to all use that. But, we went back to things like calling our seniors and making sure that, are you okay? And sometimes those phone calls would be really, really, long. We went to videoing and creating online communities and let's just check in and let's, and those kinds of things. So again, I'm going to go back, and I feel that it's a little bit of a compliment on, like, I love that you have so many entrepreneurs and your entrepreneurial spirit. And although I do work for a big organization, I personally feel like I get to be a little bit entrepreneurial.
Definitely.
And I think our YMCA sits in those, in those spaces. So that by far is the toughest thing, and I hope we never have to do that. Do I think we're better equipped?
Yeah.
Do I think some really cool innovations of meeting people where they are came out of that? I 1,000,000%. Do I think we have created other experiences? We learned through it. We learned, even more how people struggle through things. I think we're standing in spaces of helping, we got a whole post-COVID youth world that is something different than we've ever seen in youth development. Kids that are now in high school or just getting to post-high school, we're in middle school. That's where where you find your people. That's where you go herd mentality, and they weren't allowed to do that. That has profound development issues. So we're constantly thinking about how is that? How do we help?
That's awesome. Whew. All right. If people want to get involved, if they want to look into the careers that are available at the YMCA, if they want to volunteer, how can they get in touch?
Yeah, we have a very robust website that actually has all of those career activities, as well as volunteerism. Levels of engagement is something we're also focusing on. So volunteerism is how we tick in, the YMCA. So YMCARichmond.org is our website, and that's the easiest way to get connected with us. Certainly show up in a location. Like I mentioned, we've got locations in all of our Greater Richmond area, and we're there to meet and greet and, show you how to get involved.
Beautiful. Love it. Yeah. Appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you so much for the invitation. This was super fun.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
And we'll see you guys on the next episode.